Well, good morning or good evening to you all, and welcome to our INSEAD Tech Talk today. So I'm Joe Santos, an affiliated professor of practice in global management at INSEAD, based on the Europe campus in Fontainebleau, and I'll be hosting the session today. Today's webinar is part of the INSEAD Tech Talk series by Digital at INSEAD. And Digital at INSEAD is dedicated to exploring how new digital technologies and their applications, as well as their impact on management, on business, and of course on society. And for more information, please do visit Digital at INSEAD website. At INSEAD, we also want to show our gratitude to our sponsor, Accenture, that makes these talks possible. And before we dive in our topic today, I will like to do some housekeeping, something that you probably all are familiar with by now. But anyway, I just want to highlight that if you want to ask, and we hope you do have questions for us, please use the Q&A. Because you can't really use the chat for that, use the Q&A for that. And you can also upvote the existing questions if you see questions that you would really like to see answered. This webinar is being recorded. And of course, if you have any difficulty, just email digital@insead.edu, and we will make sure that we try to address the problem at hand. So, first of all, I would also like to thank Sandra Eldakak, manager at Digital at INSEAD, and Desmond de Souza, a senior coordinator of learning and innovation, who have made this Tech Talk happen. And there are two speakers that I would like to present now to you. Ritu Ann Roy. She will be leading our Fireside chat in a moment, and she's a MBA 25 candidate and the president of INSEAD's TMT Club, TMT standing for Technology, Media, and Telecom. She has researched AI. She has worked and managed in software development roles, driving cybersecurity and cloud initiatives. Ritu is passionate about how emerging technologies like AI are reshaping industries and global strategy. We also have Peter Williamson that joins us from the University of Cambridge in England. Peter is a long-standing old colleague of mine, co-author of mine since the late 90s when we met at INSEAD. At that time, Peter was a faculty at INSEAD. So Peter is an honorary professor of international management at the University of Cambridge at the Judge Business School, and he is a fellow at Jesus College. His academic appointments have included Harvard University, London Business School, and, as I mentioned, INSEAD, both in the Europe campus in Fontainebleau and in the Asia campus in Singapore. Peter is a well-celebrated author. He has published more than 11 books and over 70 articles. And he has also served as a non-executive director of companies spanning whiskey, green energy, and software. So this is all of us. And we're here to share with you some of our findings, in particular in this Tech Talk, findings of how artificial intelligence is transforming the way companies internationalize and compete globally. So that's basically the main topic of our conversation today. We have, of course, Peter and I have drawn on our own research, which basically started around 2018, 2019. We were motivated by the very fast internationalization of some pure digital or born digital firms, like, for example, TikTok or Spotify. And we wanted to develop a theory that would explain the way these companies were so globalizing so fast, actually. And existing theories couldn't really cope with that. So we first presented our findings, our first theoretical findings, in a conference at Jesus College in Cambridge in 2022. And then we published the first paper in an academic journal. The paper was published in December 2024. And you have, of course, access to it. If you're curious, just send us an email and we'll make sure that you have access to the materials, to the papers that have been published so far. So this is how we will proceed. First of all, I will ask Peter to make a brief review of our research findings. And then Ritu will lead our fireside chat. And then at the end, we'll devote some time to all the questions that you may have for us. So, Peter, if you please, the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you to all the participants who have joined us. I see there's around 212, so that's great, and it's increasing every moment. So thank you for joining us. As Joe said, I'd like to take a few minutes just to outline the main argument, and hopefully that will stimulate some questions in the Q&A after we have the fireside chat with Ritu. So we call this Rethinking Borders because we think that AI is redefining how companies go global. Next slide. So what I'd like to begin by talking about is just to remind us that the way in which companies understood the preferences of consumers when they went into a new market. So for many decades, what's been happening is when a company expanded into a foreign market, it needed to invest in that market through foreign direct investment, setting up local offices and conducting in-depth market research with the purpose of understanding the consumer's preferences and how their preferences were different in that market. Next. Next slide, or next, I think, yeah. So this information enabled companies to classify each new potential customer into a segment, and we all be familiar with this idea of segmentation, defined by a shared set of preferences, which were based on various proxies like the customer's age or gender or location or income. So that was the traditional way when companies, as you know, became international. They needed to make investments to get information and data on these proxies to try and classify the consumers to a segment based on their preferences. Next. Now, as we've moved into the digital world and AI has extended this even further, it's now possible for born digital firms, as Joe mentioned, to capture data from which they can impute the customer's revealed preferences through interacting with the customer. So when you go on to TikTok, for example, you're interacting with the platform, and from that, the platform can impute your revealed preferences. Now, we'll say a little bit about revealed preferences later, but the idea is fairly straightforward. It just looks at your behavior and imputes your preferences from that behavior. Next, please. So, of course, if a firm is going global, it needs a more detailed understanding of the revealed preferences than just A is preferred to B. Next. They need to be able to collect information at the level of attributes. So they need to think, what is in this video, what is in this product, digital product, and in terms of the different attributes, and then see which attributes the customer prefers. So it's a slightly more sophisticated idea that the digital world allows us to do in terms of collecting preferences matched to the attributes of the offering, rather than just I like A versus B. And of course, ideally, the information on these preferences doesn't depend on explicit choices, but can be imputed directly from behavior. Next. So the interactions, for example, the time it takes until you swipe away a video or how long you watch a video, is not you actually making an explicit reference to your preference. It's imputing those preferences directly from your behavior. So how long you spend on the video, whether you look at the video. And by accumulating data on that, one can create accurate recommendations on content, product, or services. Next. So how does the AI create customer value out of that data that we collect? So AI enables firms to build competitive advantage through what we call in the paper data network effects. And basically, the idea there is that the more users engage, the better the AI learns from the data it collects to match individual preferences, and therefore the more valuable the platform becomes to the user. So I know all of you will have experienced Amazon or one of the e-commerce, and it offers you products, and sometimes you think, why on earth has it offered me that? If we get a lot of data, we can make the platform more useful to users by actually offering them what they're likely to prefer. Next. So as engagement grows, the AI also gets better at identifying other users with similar preferences and serving up content that user likes to use. So it looks for someone that's like you based on the preferences that it knows about that person. And it says, if this second person liked the thing, probably you will like the thing. So we, again, might talk about that later, but it's the idea that as we get more data and we get more users, there are likely to be people that have shown similar preferences to you, and we can use that information to offer you products and services that you haven't even thought of, but are likely to like based on your preferences. Next. And of course, as the user base grows, it's likely to attract additional suppliers with more and new and more varied offerings. And this is something we'll come back to talk about later. But the more variation you have across attributes, the better we have information where we can link the attributes of the product to your preferences. So having more suppliers with more variety actually makes the platform more valuable and the AI work better. Next. So the key idea in the paper is that this ability to impute revealed preferences and to gain benefits, data network effects, as the network expands, opens up a new possibility for born digital multinationals that they can adopt as they globalize. Next. So born digital multinationals can rely on utilizing the AI to predict behavior using the information on these revealed preferences with little need to accumulate knowledge necessary for having proxies like your location and your age and your income. So instead of using the traditional method of trying to segment customers according to their demographics or their income, we can go straight to the customer's behavior, look at the way they're behaving, and impute some understanding of what they prefer. Next. So this business model, interestingly, provides a way which marketing people have talked about for many years, of realizing the possibility of personalizing the offering to a segment of one. So instead of the segment being a country or an income level within a country, the segment is just you as an individual, because we're collecting data on your preferences directly from your behavior. So we don't really need to have foreign direct investment, and we can instead pursue a country agnostic strategy. So we don't really care where you are, because we're actually measuring your direct preferences from your behavior rather than using a proxy like your country, which is a very imperfect way of understanding your preferences. So we can just have a strategy that focuses on users as segments of one, personalizing the content based on the preferences and ignoring basically the country or the location in the world. Next. So, of course, I mentioned that being able to do that with AI and digitalization means that we don't have to make foreign investment in understanding the customers, but we might well still have to make foreign investment in other areas. So what's interesting aspect that we came up in the research is while you don't need FDI to understand the customers, you might need a different kind of FDI. Next. And that could be, of course, to meet regulatory requirements. So as you all know, the geopolitics of the world at the moment is saying that these digital firms need to store data locally, perhaps, or follow regulations about content that vary by country. So we might still have to make foreign direct investment. Equally, foreign direct investment in a new country might be necessary to support the value capture activities of these multinationals. So they might need a local sales team, for example, to work with potential advertisers to understand how the advertiser's behavior works in that country. Next. And of course, as is becoming more and more important, regulations might say that you have to detect and mitigate harmful and inappropriate content according to the local regulations. So again, those regulations might vary depending on the customs and norms of the country. And so we might have to invest in that country to make sure we can follow the local regulations. So I think the interesting point here is that foreign direct investment's no longer necessary in some aspects, but it might be necessary in new kinds of aspects. Next. So finally, which companies can adopt this new AI-driven strategy? Next. So Joe and I looked at a lot of companies and thought, how does this apply to their product or service? And we came up with three criteria or three traits that determine how applicable this strategy is. And the first of those is frequency of repeat purchases, because if the customer's not frequently purchasing, you can't accumulate enough data. And that it's better if it's not just purchases, but actually interactions, so that we can see how your behavior actually works as you interact with the multinational. And thirdly, a wide variety of offerings, because if we don't have lots of offerings with different attributes, we can't work out how your preferences vary with the attributes. So that might be things like colors or sizes or the content of a video. So those were the three things that we need in order to really apply this strategy. And of course, those three traits vary between different industries and different companies. Next. So frequent purchases are important because they make it possible to continually refine the recommendations based on multiple interactions with the user. So if you only buy the product once every 5 years, we're not going to collect any useful data on your preferences. But so you need frequency. Next. And sellers of physical products can also use AI to personalize their offerings. So if the products like maybe fashion clothing purchased regularly in great frequency in lots of different varieties, we can still collect all the data. But in a physical product business, your ability to personalize the product is limited by the economics of manufacturing. So, the cost of even trying mass customization to really personalize the product costs a lot of money. So that might restrict our ability to act on the data that the AI collects if we have a complex physical product. Next. So there are some industries in the spectrum of traits of frequency and variety and so on that have even more limited scope to personalize offerings. And the first of those would be the general e-commerce platforms. And we would expect lower personalization there because we're buying lots of different categories from those e-commerce sites, and therefore we're collecting less useful information on the attributes than if we bought the same product category over and over again. So it's something that the e-commerce platforms probably could use as a strategy, but it's somewhat limited by the fact that people are buying a diverse set of product categories. And finally, B2B firms are probably even more limited because while many of the B2B purchasers purchase frequently, they buy the same specifications. So I don't get any useful information on how different attributes link to their preferences because I'm buying the same thing over and over again. So we might come back to that, but I just want to end there by giving you a sense of that there are some traits of your company or your industry which will affect how applicable this strategy is. One extreme, a business like TikTok, and the other extreme, a B2B business, which could still use the strategy, but in a much more limited sort of form. So I hope that's given you an outline of our basic argument. And now I think we can move on to chatting about that, and then your questions and answers that will come a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So Ritu, up to you now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this platform, and greetings to everyone who has joined in. We have more than 200 of you here. So let's hope that we have an amazing fireside chat with both of our co-authors here, both the professors. Thanks for all the questions. Do chime in your questions and we will answer them towards the end of this fireside. So let's begin with the first question in a most basic manner. Professor Joe, this is for you. So in your paper, AI is very central to the argument. Yet today, when people talk about AI, they often mean LLMs, that is large language models, or generative AI. So your paper seems to be meaning something quite different. Could you please clarify what kind of AI are you referring to, and why is that distinction really important for your theory of internationalization?
Well, thank you, Ritu. Yes, it is important to distinguish between what is now often spoken about, which is, as you said, LLMs, generative AI, and the AI that many companies are starting to use. Companies like, for example, ByteDance have started to use in 2012 when they launched their first offering, which was about news, not video. So this AI that we are talking about that is necessary for the theoretical arguments that we make is an AI which is indeed very similar to what is now becoming the future of AI. So in the future, as it were, AI will always be a system, not a single algorithm or a single technique. It will be a system, a composite of different kinds of AI models or algorithms working to achieve a particular purpose. In this case, the purpose, of course, is to impute reveal preferences at the individual level from interactions. By the way, interactions need to be dynamic. So if I do something, the AI in the platform will then change something, and that change something will implicitly make me change something, and so on and so forth. So the AI, first of all, needs to be dynamic. It needs to be capable of real-time recommendations or real-time choices. And it needs to do a number of different things. So very quickly, it will have to employ techniques, often known as deep learning. So there'll be like a layer of deep learning, and deep learning will be used to quote unquote perceive and interpret, for example, the products, their features, and how these products and features are related with consumer or user behavior. So that's a deep layer there, made of course, artificial neural networks. And it will give us a representation of the relationship between the features of the offering of the product that Peter mentioned and the user behavior. And that will allow for the imputation of revealed preferences. So that's key. But then we need a layer of machine learning techniques that will be capable of predicting patterns from user data. And in doing so, we'll be able to decide, for example, the ranking of offerings, the ranking, say, of videos to present to a user, and to respond to the real-time choices that are being transmitted to the AI by the implicit behavior of the user. So that layer of machine learning will be there to rank, to recommend, to optimize, for example, the variety of the offering and the engagement of the user in real time. And then we need good old-fashioned symbolic AI, also known as rules-based AI, to basically have in the system the logic of business, because that logic needs to be present there. And also, of course, all the compliance and regulatory and ethical needs of that the AI system has to comply with. And that, of course, the company, the platform owner, needs to make sure are there. And this is, of course, a very important and critical element. So this means that there'll be a system, and this architecture of AI, made of many different AIs doing different things, from computer vision to NLP to sound recognition to ranking to recommending, all these various models of AI will be put together in a particular way, which will be unique to the firm, and that on itself is an important source of competitive advantage. So the AI system is a source of competitive advantage, and I hope we'll have time to talk about that in the case of TikTok, for example. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Professor Joe. We have lots of questions pouring in from our inquisitive audience. So let me jump on to the next one, Professor Peter. This is about regulation and new borders. Couple of questions from the Q&A as well, aligning to the same point. So TikTok's US experience, from Oracle Cloud hosting to employing thousands of moderators, shows how regulations can shape global strategies. We are very curious to understand from your perspective, do you see regulation becoming a new border in a world where AI seems to erase the traditional ones? And do you think that global companies can balance innovation with respect for ethical norms and regulatory borders?
Yes, thank you, Ritu. I do think that the regulations on data and AI and IT are becoming the new borders. So we're rapidly moving to a world where, as I mentioned, you have to store the data in a certain place. You have to follow regulations with the data that might be different in one country from another. Some of the norms about what is reasonable or might differ between countries. So I do believe that those new borders are emerging. So in the physical world, of course, the borders were the customs post, but now in this digital world, it's really these regulations. And it's quite interesting to me that Trump's tariffs are all about the goods. But there are other regulations that are affecting the data flows. So what that means essentially is two effects. The first effect is that it may restrict our ability to pool data across the world, and to get these network effects and to improve the reliability of the offerings and the preference understanding of different consumers, it's good to have data from around the world. And maybe the regulations are going to reduce our ability to do that. I don't think it will eliminate it entirely, but I think it will reduce our ability to do that. And but the second thing it means is that companies need to actually earn a license to operate in different countries. So that's an acceptance that you could have my product or my service in your country. And getting that license to operate might mean that you still need foreign investment in the country. You still need people on the ground in the country. So FDI won't disappear, the foreign direct investment, but it will change. And I think it will change toward working with these regulations which are creating new borders and actually earning your company the license to operate in this place, even if it's linked to a global system.
Yeah, thank you so much. Professor Joe, I would just like to ask you, TikTok features extremely prominently in your research, and you have described how it bypassed cultural proxies and inferred individual preferences directly through micro interactions. So, what, in your view, makes TikTok such a turning point in how firms can scale globally?
Sure. Let me make sure that I can be heard.
Yes.
I hope
Thank
it's worthwhile listening to me in this case. But so TikTok was probably one of the first companies, if not the first, that went the route of revealed preferences. Not explicitly, we're not saying that they actually chose it, but what they did is tantamount to having chosen this revealed preferences route. Which is quite different from, say, for example, YouTube. Let's compare. YouTube was the dominant video platform until TikTok showed up. And by the way, TikTok was able to very successfully compete with YouTube, so much so that YouTube later copied or tried to copy TikTok with the famous YouTube Shorts, and Instagram did the same with Reels. So TikTok was extremely successful because, for example, instead of, as with YouTube, the AI system requiring the user or the consumer to choose between a number of recommendations, TikTok opens up their app, which, by the way, is a single app, single meaning it's the same app for user consumers and for user creators. Same app, not different apps, not different places to go to. So when you open TikTok, you immediately have what's called the For You page, and immediately a stream of videos shows up. You don't have to choose anything, they will show up. And then, of course, you can quickly throw them away or see them often and so forth. Peter spoke about that. And that data, that behavioral data, is going to be then interpreted by the AI, as I mentioned, for example, by a deep layer stack of techniques that will understand how the features of those particular videos are related with your interactions and so forth. So TikTok was the first to do that, which is quite remarkable. And of course, to do that, they had to employ a series of different kinds of models and algorithms. As I said before, they had to use, for example, symbolic AI, rules-based AI. So where human knowledge is simply codified into a computer program, things that we have done for decades on end. The first part of AI was that, and it's still perhaps the most important application of AI in the world, although it's often not spoken about. And for example, they have certain rules that have to do with how they optimize the engagement, how they do what's called cold start, which is a very problematic choice in the case of platforms such as TikTok or others, which is if there's a new video or some new song, how do you start its appearance? Because it's new, nobody has seen it yet. So for that, you can use rules that come from your own understanding of the market, your own understanding of videos and of the product or of the consumers and competitors. They also have, for example, a very innovative cold start for new creators and how new creators are going to be part of the system. Again, unlike YouTube or other platforms, TikTok does not use the popularity of the creators, does not use any metrics from social media or social networks implied by social media behavior, unlike most platforms. So it's the features of the video, the features of the product, and your choices that make the AI understand, again, then through a layer of statistical AI, not necessarily deep AI, deep learning, but machine learning, that will predict and rank the offerings to your own personal preferences. And that's what makes TikTok really different. TikTok, by the way, or rather ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, was one of the first to develop recommendation systems that are real time. But they also opened that up. They published, for example, in 2022, a paper describing what they call Monolith, which is one of these real-time recommendation systems that any company can now use because it's publicly there. The whole architecture is there. So indeed, ByteDance created a subsidiary to consult and advise companies on how to use their own types of AI systems. So all these things have made that indeed TikTok has developed an AI system, a composite of symbolic AI and statistical AI, and in the statistical AI, partly machine learning, traditional machine learning, and part deep learning for very, very different functions. And that architecture is indeed an amazing competitive advantage. And by the way, speaking of the US, there's now a lot of conversation about how and what will be passed on, say, to some American venture, probably led by Oracle, which, by the way, ByteDance has chosen before because of the pressures in the US. And the question is, what will happen to the algorithm? It's actually not an algorithm, it's all this system of algorithms. And I am personally very curious to discover what will happen to it, because I don't think anyone knows yet.
I would like to bump this question with two follow-up questions that our audience has asked regarding prediction and personalization. So yes, we have seen the tremendous success of companies becoming global very quickly because of AI and its personalization recommendations. However, one of our Helen, is actually pretty sick of the recommendations. And do you think we should actually have a do not personalization toggle also available for our audience to choose whether they want AI's recommendation or whether they should not? Today, we do not have that option. We are fed the prompts of what AI believes we like. But just curious, happy to have Professor Peter's opinion here as well.
We could have that option. I think the problem with it is when the variety is so huge, if you turned off the option, you probably get a lot of stuff that was of no interest to you. So there's a positive and a negative of doing this. If you turned it off, the algorithm could still collect the data, and it might use it for other people, but it wouldn't be able to use it for you. So having it turned off, you might actually lose out in the sense that you're going to get things which are recommended to you or less likely, or you won't get any help in choosing from this massive. I mean, if you think about the number of things on TikTok, it's so huge you might get just lost in the whole thing. So it can be annoying, but it also does have advantages in giving you something you're more likely to want.
Yeah.
If I may, to that question, if I may read too quickly, because it's actually a very important and interesting question. There could be in the future, for example, I haven't seen it yet, but there could be some sort of ability to fine-tune personalization, right? Like one can fine-tune the heat of a LLM, so forth. So how generative AI becomes more generative or less generative, more creative or less creative, we may have some sort of degree of personalization. However, probably the members of the audience that have that question have been confronted with recommending machines or recommender systems or AI systems that personalize in a static way. In the case of TikTok, for example, and hopefully more in the future, the recommendations are real time, which means that, for example, suppose that you like soccer match videos, and suddenly today or tomorrow you don't feel more like seeing them. If you swipe 2 or 3 quickly, in the case of TikTok, very quickly the system will adapt to your contextual revealed preferences. And so it will stop showing you that, will show you something else. In the case of TikTok, for example, and hopefully in the case of many other recommender systems or streaming systems, there's also, again, done statistically, completely different videos are randomly introduced now and then. And completely different kinds of creators are introduced now and then. So that's why the non-deep learning part of machine learning used in the systems try to optimize statistically the variety of what you're seeing, so that you don't see all the time the same flow of the same kind of, because as the audience notes, that will be eventually boring, and we are curious as human beings, so we want to see new things. So I think that we will learn how to do that, or companies will learn how to do that. Perhaps members of the audience will learn how to do that much better than presently.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for all your inputs here. My next question is regarding the distinction between globalization and localization, and the competence that we have with traditional companies versus the born digital companies. So, Professor Joe, your framework identifies number of decisions and a variety of key dimensions shaping AI's internationalization potential. Now, beyond this born digital set of companies, what traditional sectors do you believe are best positioned to leverage AI for global expansion?
Right. So when we say, of course, I presume that when you say traditional sectors, and when the audience is thinking about traditional sectors, we could think about sectors that somehow, or companies in these sectors that have already made some transformation in terms of using digital technologies. So we need some sort of digital environment inside the, let's put it, the business model must be somehow in a digital environment for us to be able to use AI in this way. And Peter, I'm sure, can add a bit to that. But so some businesses, for example, specialist retailers. So specialist retailers like Shein, for example, Sephora, do sell offerings that are usually bought many times. Low price fast fashion, for example, in the case of Shein, or cosmetic products in the case of Sephora, or even other chains. So the same person buys a lot of times over time. There's a lot of diverse features and offerings within the same product category that people choose from. And therefore, from that, it's not the potential of using AI to enter new markets is not as high as with born digitals like Spotify or Google News or, of course, TikTok or similar platforms. But it's there. It's medium to high. So specialist retailers, for example, could probably make some inroads here. In the future, we are now seeing wearables like smart glasses that will be able to convey to an AI at your choice what you look at, what you manipulate. So if you go into a normal supermarket, for example, or a normal apparel store, and you start touching things and paying attention to certain brands and not to other brands, you pick up something and then you don't buy it, or you put it in your cart. And the AI will be able to use all those implicit interactions between you and your physical environment through, for example, smart glasses, and be able to impute reveal preferences from there too. So I think that the technology will allow us, at our choice, to convey to an AI system enough data, in particular enough behavioral data of our own, that will allow then the system or the companies, again, at our choice, to create value for us.
Yeah,
But I'm sure may
if I can just add
Yes, sure.
quickly to that, I think what it means is that traditional companies who basically don't know anything about their customers, really, well, they do research, but when you buy it, they're not collecting any data on you, really. Very limited. What they're going to have to do is think about, how do I create opportunities for these interactions in the buying process, where I can collect more data so that I can use this kind of strategy more fully.
Yeah. Professor Peter, actually, there are a couple of clarifying questions again for this topic. So I would encourage if you can help us understand more about the power dynamics between local businesses and international companies, and how could small and medium enterprises actually use the benefit of your research to scale up their operations in the midst of heavy giants around us.
So that's a very good question. So I think actually it's going to reduce the relative advantage of local companies, because historically they had better data on these segments by being there for longer and being more experienced than the big multinationals that were coming more recently. And now, if I can collect data on you as a segment of one, that advantage will largely go away. So I think that's a problem. So I would say there are really two strategies that we could do. The first is to say, well, if I'm a startup company, I need to expand my user base as rapidly as possible so that I can get the data and reduce my disadvantage. So I guess that's why you see a lot of these startups going for what we used to say the quest for eyeballs. It's really to get enough customers so that I can get these data. The second thing we might do is say, how could I form an alliance with one of these bigger players, perhaps in an adjacent industry or so forth, that would give me access to data that's relevant to me that I don't have yet as a local company or as a smaller company. So I think there are a couple of things that we can do in terms of changing our strategy. So you see a lot of the force of this saying, you have to get as many customers as you can, or you have to tap into someone that has data about those customers that might be relevant to you.
Yeah, definitely. Just again, just to continue on the same topic, quick questions on the same. So, do you think this will change power dynamics between countries? Because today we have few firms that actually dominate AI, that dominate this entire recommendation space. Professor Joe, curious to hear from you as well. Do you think this will change any global alliances or ecosystems in this AI-driven world?
Well, indeed, today we are in a phase where particular kinds of AI, deep learning notably, is developing very, very quickly. We're seeing different foundation models kind of trying to show up. But the few companies that we see are companies that have done one or two or three foundation models based actually, in the case of LLMs, on the same technique, the transformers neural network. So this is not the future of AI. This is the base of AI, or in the particular case of this certain kind of AI. Let's not forget the rest of AI. And here, small firms may benefit a lot because although we know that AI is expensive, inference is expensive, training is expensive, but because localizing a business will still have a lot of real human element to it, of course, namely in front-end services, that won't change. So what companies need to do is to really start thinking on how to use these very generic foundational models that a few companies will develop, and then create their own architecture, and therefore their own particular business model. And this will allow companies, even relatively small companies, if they're able to partner either with ecosystem leaders or with other firms in different places, this will be, I think, an amazing possibility that we'll see in the future. So I'm not so worried about countries dominating. We just need to make sure that the companies that own some of the foundation models are open, so that these foundational models can be used by other firms instead of having to be forcefully going through them, as some companies seem to indicate at the time being. But that will pass. It's just the current transition.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. There's an interesting question from one of our audience members here. His question is, AI seems to help companies traditional geographical boundaries by tailoring offerings to individual customer preferences. Yes, absolutely. But when firms leverage AI and data this way, what is the main driver of value? Is it cost reduction? Is it customers' willingness to pay? Is there any examples that both of you professors could share that could fundamentally redefine any kind of business model or profit structure through AI?
Yeah, so if I can start off, I don't think it's just cost, Rita. I think a lot of behind what we've said is actually getting data that can tailor the product, personalize the product more to you. And if I take a company that's changed its business model to get more data, that's in a very traditional industry, in fact, in B2B, is a Rolls-Royce aero engine. So instead of selling the engine, they now sell power by the hour. So for every hour that the plane's in the sky, they get the revenue based on that. And that part of the reason that they've done that is that gives them an enormous treasure trove of data about how the engine's performing, when it needs to be maintenance, and all of those things. So they could actually better serve their customers. So I think what this says, that even if you can't really pursue the strategy that we have mentioned exactly, what you can do is think, how can I change my business model to collect more data from interaction with the customer? And the aero engines is not like a consumer interaction, but it means that instead of Rolls-Royce selling the engine and not really knowing what's happening with it, it's actually interacting with the engine all the time. To collect data on this. So I think a lot of companies will need to think how to do that.
If I may, Rita, quickly.
Yes.
Yes, directly to the question by the member of the audience. Yes, the AI that we're talking about, the theory that we have developed, is about, to use a concept that was in the question, to increase willingness to pay. So it is not about reducing costs. It's not about efficiency. That's trivial, less interesting part of AI. Trivial in the sense that it won't really be strategic because most people will do it anyway. It is the adding value to the consumer, to the perception of the consumer. And this is why revealed preferences will become a much better concept than now. So revealed preference is an old concept in economics, in consumer economics. And the reason why revealed preferences are there is because what economists call the utility function, or the perceived value for me of using Zoom, for example, is an intangible, is non-observable, and nobody can really know exactly what it is. But if I reveal through my behavior, not through filling surveys or responding to some sort of questionnaires or in a chat among consumers, no, through my own behavior, if I reveal preference to, for example, the use of Zoom as opposed to another similar offering, that revelation will allow companies to then serve me better, to personalize, to give me what I need, even if I'm not able to say what I need. And that's what personalization is, not to be consumed with customization, which is companies doing what the customer says the customer wants. And that is not what we're talking about. So I'm confident this is AI to add value to consumers, to add value to society, not to simply cut costs and simply lay off people, which is the easy solution that anyone can do, actually.
Thank you so much. We have had amazing responses from the audience, and thanks to all the insights that both of you have shared. I would like to actually wrap this up with one last question to each of you. So, what emerging research questions or real world developments around AI are you most excited to explore in the recent years? Not just in terms of recommendation system, but also in terms of how AI could help develop human upskilling services, if it could help balance global scalability with local authenticity. Just curious to hear from both of you, picking up this amazing fireside chat.
Well, very quickly, if I can start out, I think we've already touched on this, but one of the things that really interests me is how might this be applied to more traditional non-digital industries where the digital component is increasing. So I just mentioned the example of Rolls-Royce aero engines. I think we started with a rather specific set of companies like TikTok, and an interesting research question is how do some of these ideas apply to more traditional industries?
Yes, I think that, at least for me, one of the most interesting questions that I can think about is the evolution of these AI architectures. And so I encourage every member in the audience to go back and read about symbolic AI, about rules-based AI, about statistical AI, to review statistics, to look into non-parametric statistics, which is key here. And it is those subjects that you can actually read, or you can see lectures on YouTube, or you can come to INSEAD or to Judge and to other great schools around the world and learn. Do not get fixated on LLMs, do not get fixated on Gen AI, because that's only a piece of the thing and not the most interesting one going forward. This ability of putting together different old-fashioned and forward-looking kinds of techniques that will make it worthwhile. And thank you, Ritu. Thank you to all. It's time to wrap up our Tech Talk today. We're here for you. So if you have any question, you can simply send us emails, either through digital@INSEAD or directly to us. Both Peter and I, of course, were clearly visible in the INSEAD and University of Cambridge websites. So do contact us, do send us your comments, your suggestions, your questions, and we'll be delighted to reply to you. Thank you so much, and have a nice day or evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ritu. Thank you all. Bye for now.